My name is Sable Hart, 34 years old. The first time I walked into this house, the floors whispered with sunlight, and the air felt like it belonged to me. After years of coding until my eyes stung, taking late night support calls, and saving every penny while my friends spent theirs on weddings and vacations, I had signed the deed on a 4-bedroom home with a sprawling backyard. The moment the keys hit my palm, I promised myself no one would ever take this victory from me. For weeks, I lived in a kind of dream, wandering through hardware stores, comparing light fixtures, brushing my fingertips over fabrics I'd only seen on Pinterest boards. I picked out furniture piece by piece, filling each room with something that made me feel like this house wasn't just shelter, but a story written in oak tables, velvet curtains, and carefully chosen art prints. I loved walking through the halls barefoot, hearing nothing but the quiet hum of a life I had built alone. But even in those peaceful hours, a shadow stretched across the joy, my family. I was the older daughter, the steady one, the responsible one. My parents had always tilted toward my younger sister, Megan. She was 31 now, married to Jake, a man who was more agreeable than ambitious. Since childhood, Megan had been the one they shielded, defended, even subsidized. She wanted to major in art? They covered the tuition. She wanted to live off campus? They rented her a condo. She wanted a wedding with champagne towers and a string quartet? They paid. Meanwhile, when I was 16, Dad told me flatly, "If you want spending money, you'd better work for it." So I did. I learned to fix computers for cash, socked away every cent, and eventually earned a scholarship that paid most of my tuition. I wasn't bitter, not exactly, but the ledger of sacrifice was carved deep in me, even if I didn't bring it up out loud. When my parents came over for their first tour of the house, I had been anxious but proud. Mom stepped through the doorway in her tailored blazer, scanning the open concept living room like she was appraising it for resale. Dad lingered by the fireplace, expression unreadable. Megan disappeared upstairs, her heels clacking against the wood. When she returned, her eyes swept the high ceilings with a mix of wonder and contempt. "You don't need all these rooms," she said. "You live alone." I steadied my smile. "I won't always live alone. Maybe one day I'll have a family. Besides, I've always dreamed of having a place like this." I caught the flicker of envy across her face before Mom slid an arm around her shoulders. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything will work out fine." The way she said it chilled me, like some private pact had already been made. They left shortly after, their words gnawing at me even as I tried to shake them off. But I should have known. Nothing with my family ever ends at the first conversation. 2 weeks later, I hosted my official housewarming party. I filled the rooms with laughter, colleagues, and neighbors who admired the oak trim and asked about the landscaping plans. I offered wine and hors d'oeuvres, relishing that, for once, the story of my life wasn't about what I lacked, but what I had created. By 7 p.m., I noticed my parents hadn't shown. A text buzzed. "Dad and I aren't feeling well. My blood pressure's up. Sorry, we can't make it." I tried not to feel the sting. They'd always been reluctant to celebrate me. At 8 p.m., just when I'd stopped expecting them, the front door creaked open. Megan stepped inside, Jake trailing her, both lugging suitcases. Not overnight bags. Suitcases. "Hey guys," I said, blinking. "What's with the luggage?" Megan flashed a smile too bright to be real. "Mom said we could live with you. We're moving in. Where's the best bedroom?" Before I could reply, Jake hefted a suitcase upstairs like he already had a map of the place in his head. My throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" "Don't be dramatic," Megan said, brushing past me. "You don't even use half these rooms. Mom told me you'd understand." I followed Jake up to the master bedroom, my heart pounding like I'd walked into a burglary in progress. He set the suitcase down, unzipped it, and began hanging shirts in my closet. "What do you think you're doing?" I hissed. "Getting settled," Megan replied, appearing in the doorway. She flung open another suitcase and tossed her blouses onto the bedspread I had chosen with such care. "This will be our room now. You'll have to move your stuff out." My head buzzed. Downstairs, my guests were probably wondering why I'd vanished. My house, my sanctuary, was being hijacked in real time, and I couldn't even process it. "Megan, you can't just move into my house without asking me." "Mom already cleared it with you," she shot back, rifling through a drawer. "No," I said firmly, "she absolutely did not." Megan's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue further. Instead, she flung open the curtains, letting the street lights spill across the room as if to mark territory. I backed out, forcing a smile as I returned to my guests. "Everything okay?" a coworker asked. Fine, I lied. When I stepped outside to breathe, I dialed Mom's number. She didn't pick up. Minutes later, a text arrived. Just don't make a scene. Megan deserves this house as much as you do. She'll live with you until they save up for their own place. I stared at the message, reading it again and again. She thought Megan deserved my house? The house I'd worked for years to earn? Back inside, Megan and Jake mingled as if nothing were wrong. When guests complimented the curtains, Megan cooed, "I told Sable to buy those." To another, she added, "And I picked out that sofa." I bit my tongue until it bled. Later, after the last guest left, I trudged upstairs to find their clothes folded in my drawers, their toiletries lined up in my bathroom. Jake's razor leaned against my toothbrush holder like a grotesque joke. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. My parents had always treated me like a second-class daughter, but this was beyond neglect. This was theft, an invasion. The longer I lay there, the sharper my rage honed itself into resolve. Megan thought she could move in. Mom thought she could manipulate me with guilt. But tomorrow, I would show them I was done playing by their rules. I closed my eyes, my pulse hammering with the rhythm of a plan. The morning after the invasion, I walked into my kitchen to find Megan and Jake drinking coffee like they'd lived there for years. Jake leaned against the counter, scrolling his phone. Megan perched at the breakfast nook, hair tied up, sipping from one of my mugs without even asking. She looked up, perfectly casual. "We need keys. We can't just wait on your doorstep when you're not here." The audacity made me choke on my own breath. "I'll come home early today and let you in. I need to get extra keys made first." Megan rolled her eyes like I was inconveniencing her. "Fine. Just hurry. Jake's job starts earlier than mine." That word, job, hung oddly in the air. I knew they'd both been in and out of work, patching together part-time gigs. And yet here they were, treating me like their landlord and servant all at once. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, I called my boss. "I have a family emergency. Could I take a personal day?" "Of course, Sable. Hope everything's okay." It wasn't, but it was about to be. I raced upstairs, dragging their suitcases out of my closet, stuffing every sock, shirt, and toiletry back into them. The anger that fueled me felt electric, an energy I hadn't known I possessed. By the time I zipped the last bag shut, sweat dampened my shirt, but relief bubbled beneath it. I dialed a delivery service. "I need you to pick up some suitcases and deliver them to an address across town." An hour later, the driver loaded the bags into his van. I taped a note to the top suitcase in neat block letters. "Just don't make a scene. I'm not going to let parasites live in my house. Let them stay with you." It was petty. It was pointed. It was exactly what Mom deserved. By the time Megan texted, "Where are our things?" her belongings were sitting in my parents' driveway. I ignored her, ignored the flood of calls from Mom, from Dad, from Megan. When I finally responded, it was one line. "You can stay with Mom and Dad until you find a new apartment." Then I blocked them all. For 2 weeks, my house was quiet again. I relished every second. I cooked in my kitchen without someone else's cereal boxes crowding my shelves. I spread out on my bed without Jake's deodorant on the dresser. I danced barefoot in the living room with music blasting, the way I used to. But peace never lasts in my family. An email landed in my inbox one gray Tuesday morning. The subject line made my blood run cold. Notice of intent to pursue legal action. I opened it, hands trembling. A law firm I'd never heard of claimed to represent my parents. The message was blunt. Either allow Megan to move back in or repay the $30,000 my parents had gifted me for college tuition. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Sue me? My own parents wanted to sue me for not housing my sister? I forwarded the email to Aunt Patricia, my dad's older sister. She called me within minutes, her voice brisk. "Honey, do you know where that money actually came from?" I thought it was from Mom and Dad's savings. Silence stretched. Then she said, "No, it was from your grandmother. When she passed, she left a sum of money specifically to be divided between you and Megan's education. Half for each of you. Your parents only passed along your half when you needed it." It felt like a punch to the stomach. "Are you saying that wasn't their money at all?" "Exactly. It was yours by right. I have the will on file. Your father sent me a copy years ago. I'll email it." When the document landed in my inbox, the truth glared at me. Grandma's savings were to be split equally for the granddaughter's schooling. No mention of loans, no mention of repayment. Just a gift of legacy. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Grandma had always been kind to me, slipping me small bills and birthday cards, whispering encouragement when I doubted myself. She'd once told me, "You'll have to fight harder, but you'll make it." Now I realized she had tried to equip me, even after death, and my parents had twisted her last wish into leverage. I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer the next day. Sitting across from him in a tidy office that smelled faintly of old books, I laid out the story. He skimmed the will, then the threatening email, and chuckled. "They don't have a case." "You're sure?" "100%. Educational contributions are not loans unless explicitly agreed. And in this case, the money wasn't even theirs. It was yours by inheritance. They can't demand repayment. They certainly can't demand you house your sister. If they continue harassing you, we'll draft a cease and desist." Relief washed through me so suddenly I almost cried. Before I left, he added, "I'll draft a formal response. Let their lawyer know this nonsense won't hold up." Within days, my parents' threats fizzled. Their attorney backed down. But I knew better than to believe the storm had passed. My parents were like rivers. If you dammed one path, they simply carved another. One evening, Aunt Patricia called again. Her voice was softer this time. "I hate to say it, but your father once boasted that he could reroute Grandma's wishes. He claimed nobody really checked what happened after the funeral. I think Megan's half may have been spent on something else." The air in my living room thickened. "Like what?" "I don't know. Your mother hinted at medical bills once. Your father mentioned helping Megan with a condo deposit, but the point is, they never honored your grandmother's division. They used Megan's half, and now they're trying to claw into yours." I sat there, silent, staring at the photo of Grandma on my mantel. She was smiling in her garden, dirt on her hands, the same hands that had built something lasting. And here was her son, my father, boasting about stealing what she intended for her granddaughters. The betrayal was bigger than a lawsuit. It was a rewriting of truth. That night, I walked the halls of my house, running my hand over the door frames I'd painted, the walls I'd decorated, the rooms I'd filled with my effort. My family saw this place as a trophy to be redistributed, a symbol of fairness owed to Megan. But to me, it was proof that every late night, every dollar saved, every tear shed had amounted to something real. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story. Still, their silence over the following days unnerved me. No calls, no emails, not even blocked messages trying to slip through. That kind of quiet in my family meant only one thing. They were planning their next move. And deep down, I feared it wouldn't be legal this time. It would be personal. The silence didn't last. It never does with my family. One Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Patricia. "Call me. It's important." Her voice crackled through the line the moment I dialed. "Sable, you need to know what your parents are saying about you." My chest tightened. "What now?" She hesitated, then said it. "They're telling relatives you were obsessed with Jake, that you stalked him, and when he rejected you, you kicked them out of the house in revenge." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My own parents had turned me into a predator in their story. My fingers went numb around the phone. "That's insane," I whispered. "You know that's not true." "Of course I do," Patricia said quickly. "But they're saying it to anyone who'll listen. And Megan, she isn't denying it." I pressed my palm against the cool kitchen counter, grounding myself. They weren't just trying to reclaim space in my house anymore. They were trying to poison my reputation. If enough people believed the lie, it could ruin my career, my friendships, my life. That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my own eyes strangers to me. I'd fought to earn this life, and now I was being erased by a rumor. The next morning, I drafted a message on social media where my extended family could see it. My hands shook, but my words were steady. To those hearing lies about me, let me be clear. I have never behaved inappropriately toward Jake. Any rumor suggesting otherwise is false, malicious, and slanderous. If these stories continue, I will pursue legal action. I have already consulted a lawyer. I hit post before fear could stop me. Within hours, my mother called from a blocked number. I let it ring. Then a new message arrived. "Come to dinner. We need to talk as a family." It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. At the dinner, my parents sat at the head of the table, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Megan and Jake were there too, Megan's arms folded like she was preparing for battle. Mom cleared her throat. "I may have exaggerated. I told people some things that weren't accurate. I was emotional." I studied her face. The words "I lied" never passed her lips. Instead, she said she'd exaggerated, as though this was a harmless miscommunication, not character assassination. You said I stalked my brother-in-law, I shot back. Dad's jaw flexed. You've embarrassed the family. Do you realize how humiliating it is to air these fights online? Humiliating? My voice cracked. You spread lies about me to protect Megan's entitlement, and I'm the one humiliating you? Jake looked down at his plate, his silence louder than any defense. The meal ended in a brittle truce, but it was clear my parents weren't apologizing. They were damage controlling. After that night, something shifted. Aunts and cousins reached out privately, asking if the will story was true. When I forwarded them the copy Aunt Patricia had given me, the tone changed. Pity, shock, support. For once, people saw through my parents' act. But the cost was high. The fracture in the family tree spread wider. Invitations to gatherings stopped coming. Holiday texts dried up. It was as though I'd been unofficially excommunicated. At work, though, my life steadied. Free of constant battles at home, my focus sharpened. My manager noticed. 6 months later, I was promoted to senior product manager with a raise that allowed me to finally landscape my backyard. I had a stone patio laid, string lights hung, and a hot tub installed. One evening, as twilight melted into night, I sat in that hot tub, steam curling into the air, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. Hi, this is Marcus. Sarah from work gave me your number. I heard you're into old sci-fi films. Want to grab coffee sometime? I hesitated, then smiled. I hadn't dated seriously in years, but something about the simplicity of his approach disarmed me. Marcus turned out to be steady where my family was chaotic, thoughtful where they were manipulative. A software engineer with a dry sense of humor, he asked about my work, my hobbies, my dog-eared copy of Dune sitting on the shelf. And when I finally told him the broad strokes of what had happened with my family, his eyes widened. Your sister just showed up with suitcases, and your parents supported it? Yes. That's insane. I can't imagine my parents doing something like that. For once I felt seen, not doubted, not dismissed. Seen. Still, the shadows lingered. At night, I replayed Mom's words at the dinner table. Residency rules are complicated. She'd said it offhand, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. What did she mean? Had they been planning something more than just a temporary stay? I started Googling tenant laws, residency rights, how long someone had to stay in a house before eviction became complicated. The answers chilled me. If I hadn't acted fast that morning, if I'd let Megan and Jake settle in even a few weeks, it could have taken months or longer to remove them legally. They hadn't just shown up. They'd strategized. At Marcus's urging, I bought a new doorbell camera, reviewed the footage from the housewarming night. There it was. Megan slipping her phone over my console, snapping a picture of my deed binder, and my mother leaning close, whispering words the mic only half caught. First you occupy, then you normalize. The pieces clicked. Their invasion hadn't been impulsive. It had been a plan. I sat back from the screen, goosebumps crawling over my arms. My parents weren't done with me, not by a long shot, and I needed to be ready for whatever game came next. Months passed, and on the surface, life softened. Marcus became a steady presence. Weekend farmers markets, movie nights, evenings where we cooked together and laughed in a kitchen that finally felt safe again. Yet beneath the comfort, I carried a weight, an uneasy knowledge that my family wasn't finished. People like them didn't surrender. They recalculated. It was Aunt Patricia who confirmed my fear. One afternoon she called, her voice threaded with weariness. Your parents are wearing thin with the relatives. They've lost a lot of credibility. Most people know about the will now. But Megan... What about her? I asked. She's bitter, more than usual. And your parents, they're hinting about financial trouble. Mortgage arrears, maybe. I don't know all the details, but they're not as stable as they used to be. I pressed my fingers to my temples. So what? They expect me to bail them out? I don't know what they expect, but be prepared. The warning echoed days later at the grocery store when I spotted Jake by the dairy section. He looked thinner, his once crisp shirts hanging loose on his frame. At first I considered turning away, pretending I hadn't seen him, but he noticed me, and the guilt in his eyes rooted me to the spot. Sable, he said quietly, can we talk? I crossed my arms. About what? He exhaled. About everything. About the house. About Megan. We ended up at a nearby cafe, sitting across from each other at a table scarred with old coffee stains. He fiddled with the sugar packet, avoiding my gaze. I want you to know, he began. Moving into your house wasn't my idea. Megan insisted, and your mom backed her up. I thought it was wrong, but I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to start a war. Jake, you let them invade my home. I know. He rubbed his forehead. But you need to understand. Megan never intended it to be temporary. She told me, once you let her stay even a little, she'd establish residency. That way, you couldn't just throw us out. Your mom said once routines were set, the law would be on our side. You'd either have to tolerate it or risk looking heartless in court. My stomach turned. Residency, that's what she meant. He nodded miserably. It wasn't just about needing a place. It was about control. Your mom said you'd always cave if enough family pressure was applied. I felt bile rise in my throat. My parents hadn't simply encouraged Megan's entitlement. They'd engineered a scheme to legally tether me to her. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because it's over between us. Megan and me. We're unraveling, and I can't carry the guilt anymore. You deserve to know the truth. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But pity didn't erase the nights I lay awake fearing for my sanctuary. Back home, I pulled up the doorbell footage again. Megan snapping that picture of my deed binder. Mom's whisper. First you occupy, then you normalize. My blood ran cold. This hadn't been desperation. It had been premeditated theft, dressed up as family duty. That night, I sat with Marcus in the backyard, the string lights glowing softly above us. He watched my face as I told him everything Jake had said. You realize, Marcus murmured, they weren't just trying to live with you. They were trying to take the house. The words landed like stones. I'd suspected it, but hearing them out loud crystallized the horror. Later that week, Aunt Patricia filled in even darker history. Your father always resented your grandmother's conditions, she said over the phone. She insisted her money be used for you girls. He used to complain, said he deserved control after all his years of hard work. He once joked about rerouting the funds. But it wasn't a joke. He believed he was entitled. And Megan's half? I asked quietly. Patricia hesitated. Gone. Long before she graduated. A condo deposit, some medical bills. Who knows? Your father never treated it like her inheritance, just his money to dispense. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Grandma's last wish had been trampled, her legacy twisted into leverage for their schemes. That evening, I stood in front of Grandma's photo again. Her kind eyes seemed to look straight into mine, reminding me of the afternoons we'd spent in her garden. She'd taught me that soil had memory, that if you nurtured it, it remembered your care. My parents had poisoned that memory, but I was determined not to let it define me. Still, I couldn't shake the question. What would they do next? The answer came weeks later in the form of a letter slipped into my mailbox with no return address. My mother's handwriting leapt out at me before I even opened it. 3 pages long, filled with flourishes of half apologies and veiled reproaches. She admitted to missteps, begged for forgiveness, hinted at their age, their fragility. By the second page, the real agenda emerged. They were struggling financially. Maybe I could occasionally help them out. I shredded the letter without finishing it, but the shredder didn't erase the ache in my chest. Even when asking for reconciliation, they'd twisted it into another demand. Marcus found me in the backyard that night, staring at the stars from the hot tub. You okay? He asked gently. They sent a letter, part apology, part guilt trip, part financial request. Are you going to respond? Not a chance. The steam curled around us as I said it, and I felt something solidify in me. Boundaries weren't cruelty. They were survival. Still, I couldn't shake the dread that one day they'd find a new angle, a sharper knife, and I had to be ready. The phone call came late on a rainy Wednesday night, the kind of storm that rattled the windows and made every shadow in the house feel alive. I almost didn't pick up when I saw Jake's name. Sable, his voice was subdued, tired. I thought you should know. Megan and I are divorcing. I didn't answer at first. Part of me wanted to hang up, but the exhaustion in his tone kept me there. I'm sorry to hear that, I said evenly. There's more. During the separation talks, everything came out. Megan admitted the plan was never temporary. She meant to stay permanently. She thought if she got a foothold, you'd never have the guts to throw us out. And your mom... He trailed off. What about her? She was in on it from the start. Texts, plans, even spreadsheets Megan made about expenses once the house was theirs. She said once she changed her mailing address, you'd have to fight in court to remove her. I closed my eyes, nausea curling in my stomach, my own mother colluding to steal my home. Jake continued, his voice cracking. I have the messages, screenshots. I'll send them to you. I should have stopped her. I didn't. I'm sorry. When the call ended, I sat in silence, listening to the storm beat against the house. For the first time, I understood how close I'd come to losing everything, not just my peace, but the very walls around me. If I hadn't acted fast, if I'd been softer, more forgiving, I might have been trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. A week later, another letter arrived. Mom again. 3 pages, her cursive slanting as though the ink itself were pleading. The first page was dressed in remorse. I was wrong to support Megan, wrong to spread lies, wrong to threaten you. But by the second page, her voice shifted. We're not getting any younger. We'd like a relationship before it's too late. And the third page revealed the real reason. Things are difficult for us financially. Perhaps you could help from time to time, since you're doing so well. I laughed bitterly as I fed the letter into my shredder. Even her apologies had price tags. That night, Marcus found me outside by the hot tub, staring at the shredded remnants of my mother's words in the recycling bin. Everything okay? He asked. She sent another letter, sort of an apology, mostly a request for money. He studied me carefully. Are you thinking of responding? Not for a second. I met his gaze. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage, even family ones. He slipped an arm around me. Do you regret cutting them off? The question hovered between us, heavier than the steam rising from the water. After a long pause, I shook my head. No, my life is better without them. I'm freer. I can breathe. The truth was, the absence of their drama had given me more than peace. It had given me space to grow. My career soared. I was promoted again, now managing a team, leading projects with a confidence I hadn't known I possessed. Marcus and I got engaged under the string lights in the backyard, laughter and champagne, sealing the promise that some love could be steady, without strings, without manipulation. When we held our engagement party, 50 people filled my house. Not blood relatives clapping for appearances, but colleagues, friends, cousins who had chosen to stand by me when the truth came out. My cousin Rachel raised a glass and said, "To Sable, who taught us family isn't just blood. It's the people who respect your boundaries and celebrate your victories." I felt tears sting my eyes. Around me I saw faces that wanted me to win, not because of obligation, but because of love. Later, when the house was quiet again, I went to the small safe where I kept important documents. Nestled inside was the envelope Jake had sent, the screenshots of Mom and Megan's messages, proof of the scheme. I hadn't shared them widely. I didn't need to. For me, they weren't ammunition. They were a reminder. Evidence that I had trusted my instincts, that I hadn't been paranoid or petty. On top of the stack lay something else, my grandmother's old safety deposit key, the one she'd pressed into my hand when I was 18. I never used it. The box had long since been closed, but I kept the key as a talisman. Tonight I placed it into a shadow box frame and hung it by the front door. A silent symbol. Her legacy was mine to protect, not theirs to twist. As Marcus and I planned our wedding, I realized the life I had now was one I'd built, not in spite of my family, but because of the lessons their betrayal had forced me to learn. I learned that kindness without boundaries becomes exploitation, that blood ties don't guarantee loyalty, that survival sometimes means saying no, even when the world calls it selfish. Some nights, I still wonder if my parents will ever truly apologize, if Megan will ever admit the truth. But the wondering doesn't hurt anymore. I've stopped waiting for closure that will never come. Instead, I look around my house, my sanctuary, and I see the life I carved from their chaos. I see friends who became family, a partner who became my anchor, and a future no one can rewrite but me. The house remains what it always was, mine, hard-earned, fought for, protected. And if anyone, blood or not, ever tries to take it from me again, I now know exactly how to fight back.